When two experienced commercial divers planned a routine inspection of a damaged hydroelectric dam, they expected to be in and out in just 15 minutes. Despite their experience and a strict preparation plan, a fatal mistake had deadly consequences and cost the life of at least one of them. This is the true tragedy of Oliver Dam Lake. October 27th, 2020 started as a routine workday for Eric Herber and Alex Paxton. They were commercial divers for Glen Industrial Group, and today's job was a quick check of the Lake Oliver Dam in Columbus, Georgia. The company they worked for had the contract to perform maintenance on the underwater systems. The dam was operated by Georgia Power and had its own employees on site managing operations. This was a hydroelectric dam, which produces energy from the controlled flow of water through it. The chain on one of the control gates wasn't working right. Eric and Alex were supposed to take a look at what exactly was broken so that a formal plan could be made for repairs. With more than a decade of experience, they were each very comfortable with the procedures involved in such a dive. Although they were confident, the planning is quite serious and methodical. One of the biggest risks for commercial divers is differential pressure or sources of energy in the water. This includes open valves, moving water, or areas where pressure is different between chambers. This difference in pressure can suck a diver into a hole or up against a grate with deadly force. Because of this risk, the most important pre-dive effort was identifying the potential sources of energy in a facility. These were usually listed one by one on a checklist. The extensive pre-dive routine would be for the facility to lock out and tag out all of these energy sources. Lockout, tagout, or LOTO, would require each valve or switch to be locked in the closed position and tagged with a label that warns others not to touch until the LOTO is removed. This procedure is essential to protect anyone in the water. The LOTO checklist is signed off by 2 employees of the dam and then validated by the dive company responsible for maintenance. On this day, the LOTO was completed by the Lake Oliver Dam employees, and each item on the list was double-checked and tagged out for maintenance. Eric and Alex were ready to get to work, but before they entered the dam, they performed their own last check for any differential pressures. They were aware of the location of the gates and the priming valve listed on the LOTO checklist. They dropped their meter into the water to confirm that there was no movement in the water at these locations. Everything looked good, so they positioned themselves above Gate 3 and prepared for entry into the interior of the dam. Eric was the supervisor of their shift, but offered to run down to check the chain himself. He knew that the repairs ahead would require lots of diving, so he offered to go down for this instead of his diving partner. Alex waved him off and said he'd jump in to see what was going on. The area they were entering was a water-filled chamber where the main gates to the dam resided. It was fully connected to the main body of lake water. The door to the gate would be raised by a chain. When the gates were open, water flows through to the turbine to produce electricity. When it was closed, the power plant was not in operation. This main flow of water would move through the penstock to the turbines, where electricity would be produced from the turning of the turbine system. The water would then empty into the lower part of the river. When the gates were closed, the penstock pipe would empty out and essentially be an open chamber leading to the turbines. On this day, after the LOTO was complete, the penstock was in fact mostly empty because all the gates were locked shut. With everything tagged, Alex felt perfectly safe diving into the narrow column of water. He started at the top of the chain and slowly moved down as he looked for any defects. He was wearing a helmet camera and a light to record what he might find. As part of his standard diving gear, he had a light and camera on his helmet, communications with the surface tender, and an air umbilical continuously supplying him with air. As he moved down the chain past the 20-foot mark, it was all routine and things looked as expected. The chain was fine, so he continued to slide down little by little. Then, in a frightening instant, he was fully aware of the sudden pull on his body. It only took a second, because once it's got you, it's got you. His arm was closest to the hole, and it disappeared down the pipe before he could attempt any response. His body was now largely plugging the hole, which created an even greater force where the water was still moving with a violent force of 850 pounds of pressure. It was impossible to pull his arm back or resist the force of the column of water. He screamed out, Alex's arm was being pulled into a 10-inch pipe with overwhelming force. His body was pulled so hard against the surface of the dam that he could hardly expand his chest to breathe. Eric immediately began to try to pull him up, but there was no amount of pulling that could release Alex from this trap. Eric and the dam employees were trying to figure out what pressure differential could possibly exist to cause such suction. All the LOTO locations were rechecked, but they were off and tagged as had already been confirmed several times before the dive ever began. It took more than 30 minutes to figure out where the suction came from and to get the valve properly closed. So what had gone wrong? What Alex, Eric, and even some of the dam employees didn't know was that there was another valve not listed on the LOTO checklist. This pipe was to prime the penstock before opening the main gate. If the penstock was completely empty when the gate was opened, a huge rush of water would burst into the chamber and possibly damage the turbine at the end of the penstock pipe. In order to prevent this overwhelming rush of water, there is a small priming pipe that lets a smaller volume of water into the penstock to fill it before full operation of the dam. This priming system actually had two possible inlets of water. There was a flapper-type valve similar to what is found in a common toilet, and there is a gate-type valve with a wheel handle. These two valves were only listed once on the lockout form. The flapper-type valve was locked and tagged for this dive, but no one had turned the wheel of the second valve. While Alex was stuck, it took some time for the employees to access the wheel to close the valve and remove the pressure differential from the pipe that was sucking Alex so violently. This valve shutoff was located down off the top of the dam and behind a locked gate. Despite moving quickly to get the pressure under control, it took almost 30 minutes to get the valve shut. It seems like a minor oversight, but the tiny 10-inch opening was a devastating vortex in this chamber of water. When a large empty pipe is connected to an entire reservoir of water, there is an incredible differential in pressure. This differential is called delta P. In mathematics, the symbol delta means change, and the P represents pressure. So any delta P situation in diving must be carefully managed as one of the deadliest risks in the profession. The LOTO procedure is used to manage this risk and have several sets of eyes on each potential source of energy, or delta P, in the system. In this case, an unlimited source of 25 feet of water was pressing into a 10-inch wide pipe. The only way to relieve the pressure was to close the valve to isolate the lake water from the empty penstock pipe. By the time this was accomplished, it was too late for Alex. His body was under 850 pounds of pressure, and his muscles just could not expand his chest to breathe. After just a few minutes, he lost consciousness and died. After this devastating tragedy, an investigation revealed violations by Georgia Power in the operating procedures of the dam. The family of Alex Paxton sued Georgia Power and received an undisclosed settlement for his wrongful death. It seems as if everyone was following the many procedures and plans to make sure that no delta P situations existed. But the main checklist was missing an essential valve. The lack of drawings being supplied to the dive company was also a major failure. After this incident, the LOTO checklist was updated to include all valves in the dam. The loss of Alex Paxton was caused by a devastating oversight in an essential component of any lockout-tagout plan. How can you have a list that's important enough to get triple-checked for closure, but not include an absolutely essential valve on that list? An investigation revealed that Georgia Power had violated operating procedures, and Alex's family later sued the company, resulting in an undisclosed settlement. The tragedy highlighted a critical oversight in the low-tow process, the omission of an essential valve. The incident led to an update of the checklist to include all valves, aiming to prevent such a devastating error from occurring again. This horrific event underscores the importance of thorough and accurate safety protocols. The loss of Alex Paxton was a sobering reminder of how a single overlooked detail can lead to catastrophic consequences. This was the true tragedy of Alex Paxton. May his soul rest in peace.